Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome back to Let's Pick This Up Next Week, where we, as two therapists who are now your best friends, obviously, open up our minds and our hearts and let you in on all of the secrets and really just the random stuff that goes on in our brain. So I am Dee, and we are joined by DJ.
Hey, everybody.
And this week we're talking about question mark. We honestly sat here for a few minutes and we're like, how do we organize our thoughts? It's been a long week, but I think it really lends itself to the idea, because the whole idea that got us thinking is recently in the news is a new guidance that comes out from the EOCC, what did we determine it's actually called?
EOCC, equal EEOC, equal, no, EOCC. Oh,
Whatever it
it's a
is, no
hard
one
one.
knows what
There's
it
so
actually
many
stands
letters.
for.
The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. There's only one C. EEOC.
But they're the people
EEOC.
who like make workplace laws about like discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some new stuff out there, which is like causing the headlines. And then even like as we're recording, there's been new headlines that just popped up. So DJ, you're actually the one who told me. I was not aware of this until about 20
Mm-hmm.
minutes ago. Tell us about this law.
Yeah, so I'm finishing up my dissertation, which is microaggressions toward non-binary counselors, and I'm writing my practical implications. So how does my research apply to the field? What can we do with this research? And and I'm kind of looking at like current events and that sort of thing. And I note that the new guidelines came out that makes it illegal to misgender an employee in the workplace, and also force an employee to use a bathroom that goes against their gender identity. And two of the themes that are in my research, one of them is misgendering, which is a huge source of microaggression, and another one is not having availability to bathrooms, gender neutral bathrooms even, or having to use a bathroom that would go against your gender identity. So when I'm writing my practical implications, I'm like, this is important research, because not only is this just harmful to the employees, but now it is illegal to misgender your employees. So it's going to be very important, right? For how do we change the culture? Because my research is about non-binary counselors, and if counselors can't get it right, that there's a lot of people out there that aren't getting it right, especially the misgendering that happens over and over and over all the time to a non-binary person.
But you even talked about too that like your research has shown that like the most likely people to misgender a counselor is
Mm-hmm.
not our clients. Our
No, it's
coworkers and
not.
supervisors, right?
Yes, your coworkers, your supervisors, and in academia, the professors. So, and not only is it not that it comes the most from the professionals, when it comes from a client, we give them more leeway. So if it does happen, it's not as harmful, because you would expect that your professors and your coworkers and your supervisors would, be able to not do that, considering that we all took a diversity class, right? Most of us, if we took a K-Prep program, right, it's
We
something
took a
that
single diversity class.
we did, but that diversity class, like for me, completely changed my life, and I think that like if other people went into that class, I mean, we had experiences to like, we had to write a paper on like, do something outside of your comfort zone, do something that go somewhere that you've not gone before, and write about that. We went as groups to like different places, temples and stuff like that. But like, I remember someone from our grad program who had never met a queer person before, had a friendship with a queer person before, and she chose to go to a drag show for her experience and write the paper about it. So like we definitely could have taken the opportunity to push yourself more out of your comfort zone in that class, and maybe not all classes were as cool as ours, but as far as like the activities and experiences that we had, but I think that like we're falling short. The one diversity class, I guess, isn't enough for everybody. and we're falling short in the workplace of making sure that people's gender identity is respected.
For sure. And I wonder, it's unfortunate when like laws have to come in to enforce
Right.
human decency,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean sometimes like that's the stick, I guess, if the carrot doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work. But um I pulled it up. I pulled up the actual press release, or not the press release, but the actual whatever from them, um their guidance,
Ellen, yeah.
that thank you, that came out on
Mm-hmm.
April 29th of this year. And it talks about that sex-based discrimination under Title IX includes employment discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, and that sex-based harassment includes harassment, again, based on sexual orientation or gender identity, including how that identity is expressed. Harassing conduct based on sexual orientation or gender identity includes things like physical assault due to sexual orientation or gender identity, outing or disclosure of an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity without permission,
Mm-hmm.
harassing conduct because an individual does not present in a manner that would stereotypically be associated with that person's sex, repeated and intentional use of a name or pronoun inconsistent with the individual's known gender identity, otherwise known as misgendering, or the denial of access to a bathroom or other sex segregated facility consistent with the individual's gender identity. And then it goes on to give a couple examples in here, but that's it
Mm-hmm.
right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and like we were talking about, it's the first new guidance in 25 years. So, a big deal. And now, like, again, it's not just harmful to the people who you're misgendering. It is illegal. And when I say harmful, because the research from microaggressions and the impact of, what it has on a person is, it creates, the symptoms of depression, anxiety. Also, there's no sense of belonging, so it gets in the way of like a person trying to belong like in their field. It really creates a lot of questioning of themselves, their self-worth. Like a lot of things happen when somebody's like, why can't someone just see me for who I am? And and again, like in our field, the expectation, or profession, the expectation is that we have a safe space. We provide that safe space for our clients. We should provide a safe place for our coworkers.
Can I tell you I hate the term safe space?
Tell me.
Because and also like first off, it's a lot wrapped around, like we say it a lot in therapy, but it's been
Hmm.
really co-opted. Like there's a safe space training, which is all about like how to be a good ally essentially. But here's the thing: putting a sticker on your door that says
Right.
safe space ally,
Right. Yeah.
or I hate when I go to like any type of training or whatever where I don't, even if I do know people, and it starts by saying this is a safe space. Like,
Right.
are you trying to tell me?
Mhm.
No, show me.
Show me. I can hear you.
Show
Yeah.
me it's a
Yeah.
safe space.
Right.
Like,
I hear you.
you don't just get to say, "Oh, it's safe."
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
set your expectations and hold people to them to make it safe, but you don't just get to say
Right.
it's safe and then me just feel all warm and comfy, you know?
Right. Right. And just providing pronoun pins isn't enough. So a lot of times people think like we're at this training, we have pronoun pins, but is anybody actually calling you by those pronouns?
That's
And
it.
you're just saying that like, it's really hard, oh, I'm so, I'm sorry. And then not doing it, or like, I'm old, or all the excuses that like people use for like why they don't do it. Just providing the minimum accommodation,
Mhm.
isn't enough.
And I can see somehow, like, part of me does understand, mostly because I'm a person who will forget someone's name immediately upon hearing it. So I can
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, oh yeah, like it's easy to like forget pronouns, right? Like, I remember I was meeting a whole group of people at once, and like we were in that space to talk about queer issues, and come together as a community. And I remember thinking, like, it's really important. I need to remember pronouns, so much
Mm-hmm.
so that I didn't pay attention to their names. So I'm just like,
Uh-huh.
okay, they, he, it, she, they. And I was like, I don't know any of their names,
Right.
folks,
Yeah.
but at least I know
Yeah.
their pronouns. But it
Right.
is, I mean, it is slightly, it's, it's one more thing to remember, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so is someone's last name. So is someone, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Right. Right. And so like practicing, I mean, I've literally been, in my school, like doing, um, what was it that we had to do? So like our group for my cohort for internship, we had to meet for like supervision, and I would have my pronouns there. Literally sometimes a they them t-shirt. So in my Zoom, they them. On my t-shirt, they them, and still get called a different pronoun. And whatever that person would assume by looking at me.
Hmm.
And that changed over the course of of that internship. But even though it's all right there, people, it's like, are you trying? Because everything is totally right in front of you.
I think I think well, I won't even go into that because I think some people do. F it, I'll go there. Some people do willingly like
Hmm.
decide to do something different. I don't think your cohort was necessarily, I don't know these people, so I don't know their intent,
Hmm.
right? But like we talk about microaggressions, and microaggressions being like those seemingly smaller things that are
Hmm.
usually very unintentional, or you're pretty much unaware of them.
Hmm.
And something needs to draw your attention to it. But the idea is like when you start doing it intentionally. So I know
Hmm.
your pronouns are they them.
Hmm.
And like, I don't know, to purposely get that wrong is like
Hmm.
aggressive. That's not even just a
Yeah,
microaggression,
it
that's a big
becomes
aggression.
right. It becomes an aggression if you're going out of your way to like, but if you say, it's hard for me, like it's so new stuff, I can't, then you can still try and say to yourself, like, it's a microaggression because I'm not doing it on purpose.
Sure.
Yeah.
But speaking of big aggression, of
Hmm.
course, with this law, there has to be a lawsuit because we live in a
Right.
litigious world today.
Hmm.
Of course, we can't all just get along. So there's 18 states that are suing the EEOC from enforcing this mandate on the grounds that it's unconstitutional and exceeds the agency's authority and violates the separation of powers.
Wow.
Those are some big terms right
Interesting.
there. Do you want to know what those states are?
List them off.
All right, so it's led by Tennessee. So there's that.
Mm.
So Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Ohio. I went out of order. Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Virginia, and West Virginia.
Wow.
I'm not happy to
Ohio.
see my state on there.
I'm just
Hmm.
saying we're both licensed in Ohio, and it's not happy when we see those things, those laws that are coming, that are really limiting people's rights that
Yeah.
are not cisgender people.
Do you know you wouldn't know this. I don't know why the hell you would know this. I used a true gender neutral bathroom for like the first time, maybe like a month ago at this point. Because I've always seen like
Mm-hmm.
gender neutral that are like single, the door closes and no one else can kind of come in. Like it's one toilet, one
Mm-hmm.
sink. Sure.
Right. Yeah.
But I used one that's just a bunch of stalls and
Oh.
like, so that was really cool. I'd never experienced that before.
So it's a bunch of stalls next to it, like with doors, or like just like regular stalls, like Ally McBeal. Remember that? That's
No,
before your time? Ah, Ally
I
McBeal,
know
they
what,
had like a bathroom that like everybody used. And I think it was just, I didn't watch Ally McBeal a lot, but I do remember that was a big deal, that their bathroom was like for everybody to go in, and it was all stalls together, guys, girls, um, whatever your gender was. So is it like that? Like you went into,
I
oh,
don't
I
even
went
know what
into
you're
a
talking
bathroom.
about.
I went into a bathroom like that. So is it like if
It's
you went into a woman's bathroom and they have like all the stalls and
all the
just
stalls,
next to each
the
other?
line of sinks,
Hmm.
the line of stalls,
Yeah.
and it was just everybody.
I think I went to a bathroom like that at a fairgrounds in LA once, or somewhere around LA.
Ugh,
Hmm.
the idea of going to the bathroom at the fairgrounds grosses me out.
I mean, when you're at a
Um,
fairground, sometimes you have to use the restroom.
hold it. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. It's unhealthy.
But
Yeah, but
yeah, go ahead.
I didn't notice a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't even notice. I just saw like restroom and I was like, great, that's where I need to
Mm-hmm.
go. And then like while I was washing my hands, a person came up to me who was not like femme presenting. I
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that anyone would assume their pronouns had anything to do with femininity. And
Mhm.
so who am I to say who that person was, right? But it was kind of like interesting, because I would assume that that person was male presenting enough that they would feel confident using a male restroom. And then
Mhm.
I realized, like, and then I had a second of just like, did I accidentally go to the men's bathroom? Like,
Mhm.
but I'm like, no, no, no. There was toilet, or there was trash cans in the stalls. That only happens in women's restrooms traditionally,
Mhm.
which I did not really think of. But anytime,
Mhm.
anyway, so I left and I like looked at the sign and it was just gender neutral bathroom. I was like, oh,
Mhm. Bathrooms
that's
are an
cool.
interesting place to talk about all the different identities for gender, because like you said a lot of things in there, like trash cans are generally only in women's bathrooms, but what about a person that looks like me, who maybe still has a uterus and still would need to have a trash can in their bathroom? So like, it's so many assumptions that are made about what people need in a bathroom. And like, there's those assumptions like cannot be made.
And as silly as it sounds, the first time
Hmm.
I ever said something like, oh, there was no trash can in there, I remember my
Hmm.
partner telling me, like, why would there be? And I'm like, to
Hmm.
throw away a
Yeah.
tampon or like
Yeah.
a pad, or like,
Hmm.
why wouldn't, like, I mean, also you can clean out your pockets, which is really nice. Like, if you have
Right.
pockets and you have stuff in it, just
Right.
clean them out while you're in there, man. But
Yeah.
no, it's
People don't
mostly
think
for
a
like
lot.
women's sanitary items.
Right. Yeah. And people don't think about like everyone else's experience. Interestingly, I was once at an airport, and I can't remember which airport, and used sometimes the bathrooms that I would use that were gender neutral, which was even more important for me before like I started growing facial hair and stuff, because I didn't feel comfortable going in women's restrooms, and I didn't feel comfortable going in men's restrooms. And so I would always look for a gender neutral bathroom. Now I can use the men's room, and people just assume I'm a guy. Um, but I went to a bathroom, and sometimes they were labeled like family restrooms. And so like one
Mm-hmm.
stall, and sometimes they're labeled like all gender restroom. And I
Mm-hmm.
literally went into one that said all gender. When I came out, while I was in there, I heard the people in line complaining because they had to wait, and it was a family. And when I came out, the guy remarked something like, "Oh, great." Like because they had to like wait for me, when literally it said all gender bathroom. Like I am using the bathroom that I'm expected to use, and I'm still getting crap because you think that you have priority, because you're assuming it's a family restroom that you should be able to use with your family, and nobody else should use that.
Or just like let people poo where they want to poo,
Yeah,
you know?
right?
Like, I don't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, yeah. It was so fascinating. I'm like, literally, that bathroom
Hmm.
said all gender bathroom, and you're
But
assuming
like
you
it
have privilege to it. Yeah.
but it brings up a good point that like sometimes these are fantastic ideas on paper,
Hmm.
but I think you and I have both experienced, even when, so like not necessarily about like this family that had, their panties in a bunch.
Hmm.
Thinking about like when, even when organizations or when cultures or government entities do DEI on paper. And also I'm fascinated to recently learn that apparently the term DEI is going to be changed to, I don't know what, but
Yeah.
I do think that word is triggering to many people. It ignites something, which is a whole thing. I
Right.
literally looked up.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Like while we were preparing for this episode, I looked up to see like what is the new term for DEI, because I remember seeing a headline somewhere that says, the term DEI or DEI and B, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, out the window. We don't do that anymore, I guess. And so I'm like, so what the heck do we do? Like, what is the term? And like the first thing I saw was like is DEI a racial slur? Is it literally one article said, is it the new N word?
Yeah, so fascinating. Because like as much, right? Yeah. And you and I were looking and like what is the move, and why are they, why is this a thing? Because I said one of the organizations that they mentioned that used like DEI 48 times or something in their press releases or whatnot last year. In 2023, like so far 2024, zero. It's not anywhere. And it's kind of interesting because like as much as like we talk about DEI anyway, and as much as like organizations are moving for it, so it hasn't caught on. Like even in the 4 years, like and I think one of the articles mentioned that we're focusing on inclusion, but uh, still, even the diversity, equity, all of it, none of it, and inclusion hasn't caught on. Like in places, we're still fighting for it, and you can see that by like this 18, states that are suing to stop these guidelines.
Yeah, it's not that it's not integrated into practice. I think sometimes we say
Right,
these terms, or like I've helped a lot of companies, like in my consultant career, like write a lot of policies and procedures. And it's only as good as the paper it's written on if it's
right,
not the actual practice. And so you can say all you want, like, oh yes, we don't, discriminate based on this, but like there's nothing in there that says, well, the gender neutral bathroom is in the basement. There's one for the whole
right,
building and it's in the basement. Like that's not an equal, you know,
right,
opportunity
right.
uh for that.
Right. And inclusion just came up. So, in the news this past week has been that kicker. From you haven't heard of it?
The
There was
kicker.
a kicker on the same team that Travis Kelce. So Kansas City, right? Is that Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City football.
I don't
This is
follow
football.
NFL
So,
football. Yes, I knew
yes.
that.
So Travis Kelce, he's the one that dates Taylor Swift. Um, didn't they just
Do I
win?
really now have
Did
a
they
podcast
did
where we
they win?
mention Taylor
Did
Swift? Can you kill me?
yeah. So anyway, there's a kicker that spoke at Benedictine College, and he went on a whole his whole speech was about like Pride Month, which is like, basically like double month. We have a whole month where people are, celebrating like sin. We have like women. So he's at a graduation, college graduation, with female people who just got their degree, and he's saying like their true vocation is to be homemakers and wives and mothers, so that he hopes that they strive towards that, and he knows that for his wife, her true vocation, her life started and got happier when she stepped into her vocation as a mother and a wife. So the NFL came back and like acknowledged, hey, he doesn't express our views because we are an organization that prioritizes inclusion. So, you see that we're like DEI is saying it's not DEI anymore, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's just we're focusing on inclusion, but we're not doing that right anyway. And most organizations aren't focusing on inclusion as much as they obviously should be.
How about a person's vocation? Like their best vocation is whatever brings out their best self.
Right.
If that
Yeah.
is being a homemaker, if that's being a
Hmm.
full-time mom, which is like at least 17 full-time jobs to like raise children,
Right.
then that's amazing. And if it's working in a field that they're passionate about, then that's amazing. If it's like, who cares? Like
Hmm.
that's what will always kill me. That I'm like, who gets to decide who's doing womanness wrong?
Right. Well, kickers
That's so
from
silly.
Kansas City football teams get to decide. And the interesting point, Dee,
Notice
since
that you
you,
don't even know what the hell his name is.
I
This
can't
whole
remember
time,
it. Like I've seen it a bajillion
it's
times this week.
unimportant.
I've seen it a
He's
bajillion
unimportant.
times this week, and I can't. But I do. One of the things of note is that people assumed that he has these beliefs because maybe he was raised in a home with a mom who was a homemaker, but he was raised in a home where his mom is a physicist. So people are very shocked that like he's saying that a woman's true vocation is this, where when he grew up with a mom who, I mean, not only with a career outside the house, but like physicist isn't,
Hmm.
a field that is highly populated by females.
I hope she yanked his ear for that one. I
I'm
just
so
want
curious.
to.
Yeah. She hasn't said there hasn't been anything about her. But my point to all that too was that the NFL was like, we don't agree with these beliefs because we strive to be inclusive, and our focus is inclusion.
Which is cool. I mean, that's good, right? I think sometimes though, like when companies don't know where to go. So I don't really know. I know nothing about the NFL. That is not. It's not my sport. Let's talk
Hmm.
baseball, shall
Oh
we?
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but
We could talk about the
sports aside,
Cleveland baseball team and talk about DEI. For sure, that argument is still going on.
the Guardians.
Mm.
I actually, so my week, I went and got a behind the scenes tour of Progressive Field, which is
I saw
where the Cleveland
briefly. I was
Guardians
scrolling
play.
through, and I thought I saw you on
You
the
didn't even
field.
like it.
I was
I don't know that you
so, it
told me
was in between sessions. I was so quickly like, I
that.
remember you called it the Jake, and I was like, that made me think of the name change for Guardians, and I wanted to comment like, as long as you're not like, it'll always be the Indians, you can call it the Jake. But I do remember
Which,
like scrolling quickly through it.
for context,
Hmm.
for anyone who doesn't follow, it's very specifically Cleveland, Ohio sports. First off, DJ doesn't like my Facebook posts. Wow.
I
But
noticed.
so
I
the
noticed your Facebook post.
you noticed, you didn't text me and say, I hope you had a great nothing.
No,
Nothing.
no, no.
Anyway,
And I forgot about it till just
so
now, till you mentioned it again.
well, I'm glad that you remember me on the field now.
Yeah.
Um, these tours aren't exclusive. I'm not that cool. It was like
Mm.
$25 or something like that, but super
Oh,
cool. I've done
okay.
it at a lot of
Uh-huh.
different stadiums, and it's really cool. But for context, the Jake, because it was Jacobs Field, used to be the
Mm-hmm.
name of where Cleveland Guardians now play. It used to be the Cleveland Indians,
Mm-hmm.
and it brought out by Progressive Field, or by Progressive Insurance Company, I think like 10 years ago when the Dolans bought then Cleveland Guardians, and then a couple years ago, Cleveland Indians changed their name to the Cleveland Guardians. And I actually learned a lot about why, because a lot of people were like, why in the hell is it the Guardians? What does that have anything to do? Well, there's a bridge, but we all knew about the bridge. We all forgot about it. Anyway, it's very, very nuanced that I could
Mm-hmm.
go on a whole hour long about this. But nonetheless, I think more people cared about, or like, I've never heard anyone say before that they felt passionate about the name the Cleveland Indians.
Right.
Like, I've never heard anyone like die on the hill that's like, this is how it should be. And then afterwards, they're like, oh my God, how dare you? You changed
Right.
this institution. The Cleveland baseball team changed their name 5 seasons in a row in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
They were the Cleveland Spiders.
Mm-hmm.
They were the Broncos. They were like, every year they changed their freaking name.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were the Indians for a very long time. But yet, like, it's the history. I'm confused. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but we do this stuff. We like latch on to things that like will find that emotional, like, we find reasons to be pissed off, basically. We just do.
Right. Yeah. And people were still like, they'll always be the Indians to me. And I know you and I went to a game together recently.
We did. Was
And
that last year?
maybe
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And I remember like people in the field who, the fans who like refused to say Guardians. When they were like, let's go Guardians, there were people that were saying Indians, and people who are still doing the whole like tomahawk chant, like people who say that they cannot
The
see that.
Guardians don't do that,
Right,
as a by the way.
right, yeah,
This is, we're
right.
not talking about like the football again.
No,
Who are
they
you talking
did
about?
the
Redskins?
like, no, they did something like, I remember, I can hear it. I'm not going to repeat it, but I know that there was a thing that they did that would be like, an Indian kind of sound. I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't the, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it on
The
camera.
tomahawk thing that has
Mhm.
to, yeah.
That wasn't the
As
Indians?
no,
I feel like
they've never done that.
there was something that the Indians, some kind of
It was the
chant.
logo.
Yeah, but there was a
Right?
chant. There was a chant. I'm gonna have to look it up.
As a person who's been going to see Cleveland baseball
See,
since
I was going to be Cleveland
like
baseball
Cleveland
before I was going to
Municipal.
Cleveland baseball before you were born, I'm sure.
Did you go to Cleveland Municipal prior to
Uh,
1994?
Maybe not. I didn't really start going to
Okay.
games until I was at the Jake. So if you went to,
That's
you
fine.
actually went to games before. What year were you born?
92.
Mm. You went from birth. You're a
But
tiny little baby. You remember going to the municipal station, never mind. I can't
There,
say the word.
there's pictures.
Yeah. Okay.
I do remember like growing up going, but nonetheless, it is funny that like a lot of folks still call it the Jake for Jacob's Field, but
Mm-hmm.
it's progressive.
Yes.
But like I think that is very funny because like really the term Jake never could be considered offensive. It was literally just the old owner's name.
Right. Right. Right.
And now it's a corporation, but
Right.
it is funny to be like, I'll call them the Cleveland Guardians, but I will not call it progressive.
That's better. That's
I draw the
better at
line
least.
somewhere.
That's better at least. But yeah, there's a lot of people that still try to hold on. And I think there was a lot of stuff in the Cleveland that wasn't respectful to, a Native American culture. We don't need that. Like, I'm like, people wouldn't stand by if we changed the name to Cleveland Caucasians. No, nobody would like that.
Probably not. That
Right.
seems like a not celebrate my culture. Just kidding.
Right.
There's no such thing.
Right. It's not Caucasians anymore. I just learned that in my dissertation too. Like, we don't use that term anymore. White. It's white.
Do we? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah. Where I also learned we don't use field anymore. It's profession. Not the counseling field, it's the counseling profession, and it's not Caucasians. It's white people.
We have a lot of adjectives. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I could get on this soapbox for a moment, while my dogs bark incessantly in the background.
Oh yeah, I just heard that.
Mm-hmm. That's why I keep like muting myself. But like, so many adjectives. We have adjectives just to describe the whole human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've gotten on the soapbox before, but it's like when we look at like, we're not going to get into diagnostic labels today. We've done that before, but like even keeping up with like queer labels,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like LGBTQIA plus, it's kind of like if you're going to say the whole thing, that's kind of the whole thing. But that's really only in the United States. Then you miss two spirit or
Mm-hmm.
2S,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, but then you're like, okay, but if you're not one of those letters, are you really included? What's the importance of being a plus when you could be I'm like, I swear,
Mm-hmm.
as a person, as a member of that community,
Mm-hmm.
I'm annoyed by it.
And that's why in my dissertation, I started out using the LGBTQI plus. And then one of my professors was like, isn't it this now? And I'm like, we have the umbrella term queer, and I just switched it all to queer. Because queer is the umbrella term, the accepted umbrella term for all sexual orientations and all gender identities. So, but people who don't realize that the queer community has reclaimed that term will be like, you can't say that. But it's so much easier than trying to keep adding letters to it.
No, that's true. And I think too of like, it's jarring for people who haven't been used to hearing it. Like I remember I wrote something somewhere in like a professional way and I said queer. And it was kind of like do we have to edit that?
Mm-hmm.
But this brings up a good point too, that like a lot of times people kind of assume, I think I've got colorful hair and nose ring. I think people just kind of assume that I'm probably somewhere on the rainbow, right? I'm a part of the alphabet mafia in some way. But I think when that happens and like you kind of become like the designated queer, like I just have the most visible gayness
Mm-hmm.
that in some groups of people where I think people look at me, like I've been in professional settings where like people have literally looked to me for no other reason
Right.
that there was a question about the queer community, and apparently I was there to speak for us all.
That's exactly, and that's another thing that came up in my dissertation, in my research, is that that's if you're a queer person or a transgender person or a non-binary person, then like you have to answer, you're going to do all of the training for people, and you're going to be assigned queer clients, and you're going to do all this because like that's what you do, that you stick to your people, right?
But that is a commonality of like, I feel like that still happens in all of these intersectionalities of
Right.
diversity.
You're right.
And like, I recognize my privilege that I've never had to like fight against some things like that, but it is very interesting of like, I don't know. It's weird when people default to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
And
I
like,
should not be
yeah.
the end all be all of this voice,
And
you
it
know?
right, and it shouldn't be. And then, but another thing that I learned from my research, where I interviewed, non-binary counselors, was that also, because of being in the profession and working at agencies or companies or whatever, and being misgendered all the time, or being looked at like, oh, you can do all the queer training, or oh, you have to have all the queer clients, that they were, people felt that it was easier to just go into private practice, um, and
Mm.
work for themselves. And sometimes people did feel more comfortable. It was sometimes people felt like, this is not the only population I want to work with, but sometimes people felt this is the only population I belong with, because I'm going to get misgendered and, not respected somewhere else. So I guess I have to work private practice, and that's all I can do.
It's hard because I think we when we get really passionate about certain things, it's because of a human experience that like resonates with us. So
Hmm.
like I know people who are like, yeah, I only want to work with this type of person because I have lived experience that's similar to them,
Hmm.
or we have a commonality, and this person will likely feel more comfortable with me because I look like them, or I have a shared history, or whatever that might be. It does, like, that goes a long way, but then it's difficult because like then you become like typecast.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
Um, like I have a diverse, overseeing counselors and providers all over the state. Um, there, it always happens with the
Hmm.
Appalachian folks, is they almost get like shoehorned, and I'm like, there's so much more of a complex, but it becomes almost like I don't know, it's a caricature. And
Hmm.
so I think we do that with a lot of people that we don't understand, but it's like, oh, yeah, this just must be what you deal with because this is, um, I don't even know where I'm going with this thought, but I just thought it was interesting because there are a lot of parts about Appalachian
Hmm.
culture that's like, yeah, it's a little weird. And like, I happen to have I joke all the time because I have my first name and middle name does sound very Appalachian. My my mom's family is from Appalachia.
Hmm.
I don't think that that's how I got my name, but I fit in there
Hmm. Yeah.
because of my name. Um, but it's funny because, like, again, like if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have the street cred to fit
Right.
in the rural
Right.
street cred. But it's the same thing. It's because I feel like I can fit in with certain communities because of how I look, or parts of my human experience. But there's like the weight that comes with it that almost makes you want to back off and be like,
Hmm.
no, I'm just not going to be out in that way.
Right. Some of my favorite clients, and I say favorite in quotes because like they're not my favorite because like, oh, this individual person is my favorite, but I like it when I work with somebody who has a very different background as me. Because that's going to remove a lot of my bias. If like my lived experience doesn't, or counter transference or anything that can come up if my lived experience isn't just like theirs. So where it can be nice to work with the group that who is like this similar to your background, I like the opposite too, to like, I know that there's a lot of bias out of the way because we do not have the same experience at all.
Do you recognize though that there's more similarities than one would think on the surface, like as you peel back the
Yeah, I
layers?
I do. But at the same time it's nice to be able to like find something that like, I think makes them feel more comfortable. And like, I mean, we're all humans, and I think you can find something anyway, to be like, this is something that we connect on, but then still have like so much bias out of the way. I was going to say blind
That's
spot
unfortunate.
D,
That's
but we're not saying
We
blind
don't say
spot
blind spot.
anymore. Yeah.
No,
Hmm.
no. There's so many terms that are just ingrained
Yeah.
in like what we say and do that like fall on deaf ears. Like
Hmm.
actually, my day today was I spent 7 hours going to a training about the most effective ways to work with the deaf and hard of hearing
Really?
community. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that is a cool
I've only ever
training.
had a couple of deaf clients, but I've
Hmm.
had a deaf intern.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, so it was really cool experience. So it got me really interested. And then like personal experience with sign and that kind of stuff with my
Hmm.
family. But um nonetheless, so now I feel like I'm like the resident
Yeah.
sign person.
Yeah. And that, that's
So,
great because like, I mean, I thinking about a community that's probably, like I was going to say underserved, but I feel like that, that's not,
mhm.
yeah, is that still appropriate language? I feel like I want to use a better term than that, but I think that like, as a community who would feel like there'd be a lot of barriers to therapy. So that's great to like know that there's
It was
trainings.
fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the first things is just like, do you ever have to buzz an intercom to be let in somewhere? And then
Mm.
they're like, what do you think that's like? And I'm like, oh my God, because
Yeah.
I work in facilities where we have a lot of security,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the facility. And so, yeah, you do have to buzz an intercom. And
Mm-hmm.
what is that experience like when there's not, flashing lights or,
Right. Yeah.
whatever that might
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. So what do you think is the answer? Do you like, how do we, I know you and I do a training on like gender diversity and
we do.
working with, gender diverse and sexual orientations and all this stuff clients. But what do you think is the answer for, making our profession more friendly to, our non-binary or transgender, um, counselors?
I wish I had the answer, but I think I vary from extreme to extreme. I either think that like it's our duty to become knowledgeable about everything. Like, what's that expression that I hate because everyone forgets the back half of it. But it's like, oh, like a master of whatever.
Oh,
What's the fucking
yeah,
master of one?
mas- master.
Oh, jack of all
Yeah,
trades,
Jack
maybe.
of all
I
trades,
don't really
master of
know.
none.
Something like
Yeah.
that. But the second part of that phrase, whatever the heck
Hmm.
the phrase
Hmm.
is, talks about better to be a master of many, basically, or like like basically like a novice at many than just to only have this isolated thing.
Right.
So I either think that we need to know a little about a lot of things, or we just forget everything about the human experience, and we just learn that person.
Yeah. Right. And
Yeah.
really, it is. You can't have. I mean, I think that like what we learn about like, um, identities is that like everybody's identity is unique, and we do have to learn because everyone has a different experience. And we talk about intersections, like that really makes experiences completely unique based on like nobody is just one thing. There's so many things.
So what is the actual answer, soon to be Dr.
I know,
DJ?
it's so close to Dr. TJ. And I think that, I mean, it is more trainings, more laws like this, I think, right? This new EEOC guideline, because like it shouldn't be like, oh, I misgendered somebody. Like I tried, I think like having accountability like this, more moves towards training, laws, creating workspaces where everyone feels like they're respected for who they are. And I think prioritizing that is what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a learning. I don't know. It's ongoing and it's evolving, and I think that's what freaks people out.
Hmm.
Is that it's so different all of the time, and it becomes, I think, frustrating for people when it becomes like, oh, I thought I had it and now I don't, and people don't like questioning themselves.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think people have to stop assuming and
um,
like being okay with like letting someone tell you who they are versus assuming who they are.
we could get into how the brain, evolutionarily speaking, is hardwired to make assumptions because it's hardwired for survival. Of, oh, I see this reminds me of this, but that's where like implicit bias comes in, and
Hmm.
that's a whole different 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's where it comes from, is that we're hardwired for that.
Yeah. Well, I think like it's just the same way that like we work with maybe patients with trauma, and we talk about how trauma can hardwire your brain, right? You
The body keeps the score.
right? You can unlearn all of that stuff and just relearn new things. And so I think it's the willingness to unlearn as much as the willingness to learn.
Unlearning is hard.
Hmm.
I'm reading a book called Atomic Habits, which is actually pretty darn good, but it talks about unlearning a habit is way
Hmm.
harder than establishing a new one, basically.
Right.
I did, as a way to go full circle, I spent a moment Googling this dumb phrase that I couldn't think of.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Jack of all trades, master of none.
Hmm.
That's where it typically ends. But it's so often better than a master of one.
Hmm. Yeah. That's
Boom.
great. Yeah.
No idea how that closes this episode at all, but
Hmm.
It is what it
It
is.
means like be willing to learn. You don't have to know everything. Be willing to learn.
That was such a great little like wrap up in a bow. That was so
Hmm.
good. Well, there's nowhere else to go from there,
Right.
folks. That was perfect. That was beautiful. That was the creme de la creme of whatever the heck we're talking about today.
AI will tell
Our
us when we're done,
changing
right?
minds of
Right,
things.
right. Or AI will.
Yeah, AI is going to replace us all.
Well, the
Just
AI
kidding.
is
Well,
going to give us a good summary title. Yes. Yeah,
yes.
we'll see.
We'll have to pick that up next week about AI.
Right.
So thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you. Please make sure to subscribe if you're listening to us on Spotify or YouTube or Apple Podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure to give us that 5-star review. It helps people find us. And yeah, share. If you could take a moment and take a stupid screenshot of DJ and I like talk and post it on your socials or something to help people find us. We would really appreciate it. And I think that's all, folks. So we'll pick this up next week.